Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today we are continuing our tutorial series on how to fight Elvenar tournaments. And today we will be dealing with the Planks tournament. So, if you've seen previous episodes in this series, then you know generally how it works, but I will briefly reiterate for people who are new. So well, you can probably see here I have already done 1-star provinces. And in this video, or actually two videos that I'm splitting it up, I'm going to fight through 50 provinces of 2 stars. And that's going to be two parts, province 1 to 20. And that's where we will see most of the matchups, how we deal with them, how it generally works, the unit types, and so on and so forth. So basically all you need to know to fight through the Planks tournament. And 20 is a good number there because the first 9 provinces are different. They have lower star rated troops, different matchups, and so on and so forth. But starting from province number 10 and until forever, the matchups are all taken from the same pool. They're all the same. The squad sizes are different, but matchups are the same. So that would be provinces 1 to 20, and then the supplementary video where I continue with more of the same, provinces 21 to 50, and taking cuts at every 10. So after province 30, 40, and 50, and we'll see how much losses we sustain doing every extra 10 provinces, so you can see how far you may want to go. So that's a general setup. Again, this is for the current, at that particular moment in time, version of the tournament that has been with us for several years. Not the one that is just being piloted on beta and actually international servers. In 2020, we'll probably get different tournaments later, well, this year or who knows when. But for now, that's the tournaments that we have. And the chances are that the similar matchups are going to be still with us even in the new format. So there's that. One other thing that is important for fighting in Elvenar is the overall setup, where you're at, because it makes a big difference. So here we're playing Elven City at the end of chapter 16. So we have all 3-star troops, we have plenty of each of them. We're not going to cater here at all. In terms of our boosts, I have here level 28 Martial Monastery, so that's extra 28.75, I believe, % of health. I also have what do I have here? Fire Phoenix Evolution level 10 fed, so that's plus 50% damage boost for all our unit types. And as far as temporary boosts are concerned, I have Unleashed Unit Upgrade, so extra another 25% health, as well as Enlightened Light Range, so that's extra 50% damage boost for the light range units. And as far as Ancient Wonders are concerned, the damage boosting ones, I have all 5 of them, so all 5 of the unit types are boosted, and all these Ancient Wonders are between levels 11 and 12, so that means 18 to 19% of extra damage boost for all unit types. Alright, so and that's where we're at, and so let's just jump into it, into our first encounter in 2-star. Okay, so again, that's one of the matchups that's going to happen later, but let's talk about the units that, or maybe we can open some slightly more representative one. We should have some. Yeah, that's actually fairly representative of how things are going to go. Alright, so the enemies that we are facing in the Planks tournament are predominantly light range, that's our number one opponent, as well as light melee, as you can see here. And the counter unit, the third unit type, is heavy melee. So that's actually a great setup for us. Again, that's one of these tournaments that we expect to do really well with pretty low losses. Maybe not as low as in Steel, but might be actually relatively close. So as far as light range is concerned, yeah, that's the bandits are quite common there, so they're specializing, well, it doesn't matter what they're specializing against. None of these units we're going to use. So basically on our end, what we're going to be fighting with is predominantly, almost 100% I'd say, heavy range variants. And by that, again, by far and away, the most used unit here, or the one that we would like to use the most, would be Senior Orc Strategist, and I'll explain in a moment why. We're also going to use golems, and lucky to be elves here in this particular tournament. So golems, even though barrack unit, that they actually are pretty good. That's, as far as I'm concerned, the best barracks unit by far. As in the one which is actually not just usable but genuinely good. And we may use a little bit of Frog Princess, but again, not a whole lot here, even though they do relatively well. Alright, so these are our primary lineup. I mean, you may want to use, and I'll show you in a couple of matchups, some of the light range, but generally at that stage of the game and with the boost that I have, there's really no reason to do so, unless you just have an overabundance of light range and insufficient amounts of heavy range for some reason. So generally the way it's gonna go, so let's take a look again, who do we have here? So the very good news, usually the most problematic in any tournament is the existence of counter units. So once you have them in enemy's lineup, then that's a problem because your primary units are not going to do well, not as well. So let's take a closer look. Who do we have as a counter unit of sorts in this tournament? And that happens to be this guy. Orc Generals, or eventually I think these are mutated Orc Generals, but basically heavy melee units. And look at that. So not only they're bad, like literally one of the worst matchups you can think of, as in we are going to have range units and they're going to have melee units. Heavy melees are extremely slow, but even more so, look at the distribution of well, specialization here. So they're actually light melee specialists, and even though they are supposed to be kind of good as a unit type against heavy range, they're definitely not specializing, to say the least. And yeah, they're not very good at all, not against our heavy range. What that means, and it's actually important that they're really terrible in this particular case. Literally every time we see heavy melee, or Orc Generals in this case, in our matchup, we can completely ignore them from our troop selection perspective, because basically no matter which unit type in heavy range we're gonna pick, they're gonna do really well against this particular heavy melee unit type, even if there are quite a few of them, and I'll show a bit of that later. So that's kind of it. As I mentioned, the vast majority of encounters here is going to have heavily skewed towards light range, and that means our primary unit is going to be this guy. That's the Senior Orc Strategist. That's a training ground unit, which is excellent against light range. Check this out. So they have 70% damage just by themselves against light range, and we have other damage boosts on top of that. And they have 80% or 5 times damage reduction from light range, which is very important when you're facing ranged units because they are going to hit you. You can't really avoid that. And that's where damage reduction comes into play. So against pure light range, they're excellent. Pretty much the best there is. They're decidedly less so amazing against light melee, but again, they have damage reduction, which is, again, in this case, ranged versus melee. Ideally, you want to have rather damage boost rather than the damage reduction or the defense bonus, because you want to kill them before they even get to you, instead of just soak up some damage when they get to you. But they still do okay, considering that, generally speaking, we don't have huge amounts of light melee here. And generally speaking, they are relatively buffed units, so they have plenty of health, they have good attack, and the initiative is not too bad. Comparing to our golems, actually, so the golems are very comparable, actually, with senior orc strategists. Yes, if you look at the health and damage base, so basically that's very close. They have just +1 initiative compared to orc strategists, but that generally doesn't really matter that much. But they're definitely not as good. Look at just comparing to +70 -80 versus light range, they're only +20 -50. Again, it's good that they have a damage reduction, so that's very good, but damage dealt, not that amazing. They're actually not too bad, and again, like, that's actually what you would like to see against light melee. So they have damage, and quite significant at that damage increase against those units. They don't have any damage reduction against them, but that might not matter, because with that kind of damage, the light melee might not get to you. So golems are a very comparable unit, very, very good. And last but not least, in just a couple of encounters here, where we do have more light melee than anything than others, we can go with Frog Prince. Frog Prince, again, amazing against light melee, +90 -70. Not as amazing against light range, +40 -40. I mean, it's okay, but yeah, but look at this attack range, 10. That's, yeah, basically can cover the whole field, and high initiative. So that's kind of a long description of how this tournament is going to go. And basically, the only thing to remember about senior orc strategist is, unlike any other units outside of the compatriots of Graph Orc Warriors, if you use those, unlike purely supplies that are used for production of any other unit types, these guys require orcs to produce, and that might be a problem because orcs are slow to produce, relatively speaking, and you may need a lot of them for upgrades, for sparring negotiation, for tournaments, and so on and so forth. So, for instance, I am genuinely not even producing them at all in the trading grounds, simply because I don't want to spend orcs on that. You can produce them in grounds of the orc strategist, and if you have enough of those, you can actually pretty much ride on that alone. That's what I do. But there was certainly a point in time then I'd be very, very cautious about using orc strategists as not to run out, and I would generally be using them only in encounters that I know would have almost no losses for them, and that generally means pure light range or close to that. So now it's not as big of an issue for this particular city, so I'll go heavy on orc strategist. But keep in mind, if you can't afford that, which is possible, then golems, again, if you're playing elves, will do almost as well. Not quite as well, but they do very well. And again, Frog Princess are genuinely not something that we will use a lot in this tournament. So it's basically between Golems and Orc Strategists. And if you have enough Orc Strategists, literally you can go through every single encounter in this tournament. Just spamming Orc Strategists, you will do very well. Not the best, but very well. You can also do the same with purely Golems. You will do slightly worse, because some of the encounters, they decidedly worse. But still, you will do pretty well. The losses are still relatively low. So without further ado, I think we literally covered everything there is to say about this tournament. We'll start going with Orc Strategist, and again the rule of thumb here, ignore all the heavy melees, because they literally can do nothing against our heavy range, so as if they wouldn't be here. Whether it's 0, 1 or 3, or actually 4 in one case, so don't care. And if we have more or the same numbers of light range than melee, then we go with Orc Strategist. And here we definitely have a lot more light range. And as you can see, yeah, that's the first encounter, so not as representative, but not far off. So that's kind of thing you can expect. And again, here we don't have light melee, we don't care about heavy melee, so we go again with Orc Strategists. Alright, so they have the same ones. Again, you can go with Golems here, you have options here, but again, based on my experience, Orc Strategists, as long as you don't have any shortage there, will do better here, because remember, in between those 3 unit types that you're against here, this one we don't carry either way, but between light melee and light range, we definitely want to do better against light range, especially on the defensive side, because we are going to get hit by those guys. Maybe not. Again, by the time they get to where they can do any damage, we might already dispose of, well, everyone else and them. So here we focus on light range, and that means Orc Strategist. And again, do very well here, but that's early encounters, again, mostly light range. So we go with Strategists. All right. Okay, that's pure light range. That's where the strategists really shine. That's where you do sustain. Again, it's kind of hard to avoid damage completely against light range unit because they have high initiative. But with the damage reduction and whatnot, that's the kind of outcome you expect even quite a bit later in the game. Alright, that's one of the setups or matchups that you're not going to see past province number 9. Again, you have options here, so you can even go, let's just go for the Dread, just because, why not? And you see, the Dreads, even though we have ELR, and these are genuinely favorable matchups for them, like 2 they're really good against, 1 so-so, is incomparable, and 1 not so good. Because light melee is also actually good against light range, the orcs here, ancient orcs. So yeah, that's not a great outcome, so generally I don't do that. So yeah, so here again, we have 2 light melee, 1 light range. I don't think we have exactly the same, no, we actually do have pretty much the same matchup later. And that's where I actually prefer to, you can go with golems here, you can go with any of the 3 heavy range types. You can go with golems, but generally speaking, Frog Princess should do really well here, but golems wouldn't do much worse, and neither would strategists. Okay, that's again our strategists matchup. And as you can see, those are great losses to have. Again, We don't have any light melee here, so strategists. Pure light range, well, that's strategist in any tournament or any fighting setup. And as you can see, I'm primarily using strategists. So, okay, again, that's not one of the matchups that we're going to see later on, at least not exactly. Again, it doesn't really matter that much. You can go with golems, you can go with strategists. I tend to go strategists if I can afford them, because again, as I said, it's more important to defend against light range and deal with all the other melees. But yeah, you can see like we do have some losses here. And if you want to conserve them, you may want to prefer to go with just golems here. We'll sustain slightly higher losses than that, but they are much cheaper to replenish, as in only require supplies. Okay, that's the strategists again. And some losses there. And here we shouldn't have that many. Yep, almost nothing. Alright. Here we go, strategist. We have way more light range here. Again, these are 1, 2, 3. So we go with strategists. Strategists. Nice. More strategists. And as you can see, like even though we have 2 supposed counter-units, or actually that's more than we would generally expect. Even though we may have 2, or as I said, sometimes even 3, sort of counter units in heavy melee, they really have nothing against our heavy range. Yep, nice. All right. Okay, so yeah, see again. 3 heavy, we won't have the exactly same matchup like that. So here you may want to go with golems. Again, you may want to do strategists, but the losses would be relatively comparable and you will sustain some losses on strategists. So yeah, we can go with golems. Again, we did hit about 10% loss, but again, for golems, like, who cares? Not a big deal. Okay, 50-50. Yeah, then you can see some losses are there, but by and large below 5% or so. Yep, the same. Okay. And let's do another golem. Yeah, as you can see, even with golems, that's really not a big deal. Golems do really well here. But if you have... okay, and here we're gonna go with frogs. Because frogs are good against melee, and we only have 1 light range here, and these guys are basically a cannon fodder for whoever we're gonna field, as long as it's a heavy range. That should be good, and it is. Okay. And again, you see we have 3 supposed counter units. Normally I don't go there, but we only get 10% losses. so may have gone with golems. And yeah. Okay, so strategists again. And strategists. We have a lot of light range here. Yep. And strategists, even though this one is closed. But as you can see, in this case, we were more successful than some other times. Yep. So again, in 2 stars provinces here, I don't think if you field orc strategist in pretty much any encounter here, you should expect to get more than 10% in terms of the losses. Okay, this one we can try. No, this one actually, okay, yeah, this one you can try to go with the Frog Prince, but I find that in this particular matchup, probably because there are 2 light range units here, they don't do that. I mean, they all still do fine, but I prefer for this particular matchup, and I think that's literally the only matchup that I prefer to actually use golems, is for golems. Yep, so as you can see, we do sustain some losses, and that would be quite similar to what you would see with both frogs and strategists, but golems are cheaper to replace. Yeah, these are easy ones. Okay, that's a matchup, and remember, we're already in province number 10 plus, so these are repeatable matchups. So 2 light melee, 2 heavy melee, and 1 light range. That's where we go Frog Prince, and usually that works really well. That actually went worse than I usually expect, but yeah, again, worse I mean still less than 10% losses. That's gonna be our strategists. Oops. Like so. And more strategists. Okay, that's our golem matchup. Yep, so we get hit about 10 to 15%, I'd say, usually. And yeah, I prefer it to be golems. Okay, yeah, these ones are all easy button. More strategists and almost no losses. And again, that's our golem matchup. So just to reiterate, 3 light melee, 2 heavy melee, and 2 light range. That's, I believe, the only matchup that I prefer golems, actually. Yeah, these ones are all good. Again, strategists. Yeah, as you can see, that's the kind of thing that you would like and quite often do see. So way less than 5% losses. And that's a good thing. Now, what is going on with these golem matchups? I almost wanted to say, well, with only 1 matchup, it doesn't happen all that often, and then we just keep getting these matchups very consistently in quite a few provinces now. Okay, again, that's one of the two, I believe, matchups when we want to go Frog Prince. Like so, again, and that's a bit more than I would normally see there, I think. But at least comparable. And again, you can go golems there. That's works almost as well. But again, for Frog Princess, there are no issues with costs at that stage of the game usually. Because just as golems, they also require supplies only. And speed production, unless you have very different Ancient Wonder levels, is pretty comparable between barracks and mercenary camp now, so which is not always the case. Alright, and again here, usually prefer to go with, yeah, you see, that's more what I would like to see from this matchup. That's not always the case. Okay, again, another orc strategist matchup. Yeah, and you see these ones are not that amazing because there's still well, quite substantial proportion of heavy melee, even though they are not amazing, but they're not good target either, if you have that many of them. Okay, that should do better. Yep. And again, 1, 2, 3 matchup. And yeah, so sometimes you have almost 0 losses, sometimes you have close to 10%, so that's kind of expected. Yeah, not too bad. Probably less than 10. Sorry, less than 5 even. And yep, that's orc strategists. Yep, and more orc strategists, and that should do even better. Well, it's actually almost the same. And even more orc strategists. Yeah, and they all do in like a couple of percentages. And that's where we go golems. So not, yeah, and you see in this case golems did really well. So again, that's also dependent on terrain. Obviously, with our units being ranged and opponents potentially having quite a bit of light and heavy melee units, if the terrain is crappy, that's this time around it's an advantage for us, because those units are just going to get bogged in there while being pummeled by our heavy range attacks. Nice. So here in this tournament, we don't want to see open fields, open terrains, because that's an advantage to our opponents. The clogged terrain, that's what we want to see. Or in auto combat, we don't actually see it; it happens behind the scenes, but it still does happen. All right, so we are almost done with the first 20. Alright. Nice. Very good. And golems. Nice. We also still haven't seen at least one of the matchups for the Frog Prince, which is kind of an interesting one. But I'm sure we'll see it soon. Now, mention it for sure. But yeah, so far we are on province, whatever, 18-19. And one of the matchups we haven't seen yet, so that may happen. You may not see potentially all the matchups in the first 20. The first 20 provinces. So yeah, that's another reason to watch a supplementary video for 21 to 50, because there for sure we're gonna encounter that. And yeah, that's the province number 20. We still haven't seen that. So let's see. Nice. Alright, that's pretty good. And the final orc strategy. So yeah, so we haven't seen at least one of the matchups, I know for sure, in the first 20. Oh, interesting. Alright, so okay, so we are done with the first 20 provinces. So let's check out how much in terms of the losses did we sustain? Alright, and that's actually pretty good. So all we have spent so far in the first 20 provinces, and remember that's round 2 stars, is just a tad more than 12 squads. That's an amazingly low result. Really happy about that, but again, that's fairly consistent with the strategy and the troop setup as chosen. So yeah, that's pretty representative here. But with that, I'll close off this segment. So again, you've seen most of the matchups, not all of them apparently, so it's not always, it doesn't always happen in the first 20. So if you like it, subscribe, drop a like, write something in the comments, what you like, what you didn't like, what you want to see more, or in general, any constructive feedback is welcome. And if you want to check out the next video, which would be provinces 21 to 50, and we'll see how much in terms of the losses we're gonna sustain, and what kind of variability of losses will we get on the existing matchups. So with that, I'll see you soon. See ya.